Welcome to the Creative Me podcast, coming to you from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. This is episode 32, Does Social Media Automation Kill Authenticity? Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Creative Me podcast. Before we get started, I have a little bit of housekeeping. I'm using some new audio recording software today, so if there are any problems or anything you wish to let me know about the audio quality for this episode, please don't hesitate to make contact. I'd love to make any necessary adjustments. You can email me, martine@martineellis.com. Thank you. Now let's get on with the episode. Today's topic was inspired by a really interesting conversation I saw and participated in the Lightbulb Club, my Facebook group, which if you want to join, by the way, you can go to thelightbulb.club. I've set up a special URL for it. So the person who started the conversation was Amy, and her question was, does social media automation kill authenticity? And I thought it was such a great question, and there were some brilliant things discussed off the back of that question. And so in this episode, I really wanted to share my 2p worth, and also perhaps get you thinking about your answer to the question. But before we start, let's think about this. What is authenticity on social media? Well, for me, it's my voice. I don't necessarily mean my speaking voice. I mean my writing voice, my opinions, my feelings, my interpretation of various things. Actually, I think one of the reasons I enjoy podcasting so much is because for me to use my real, literal voice, it is so authentic. It's very difficult to not be your authentic self when you're talking to a microphone. And why is it a good idea to be authentic on social media? Well, part of me feels that if you're not, you're going to get found out, and people don't really like that. But putting my business hat on, we want to be authentic on social media so people develop a relationship with us, so we develop trust. Because, as I'm sure I've said many times before, business hat on, people only buy products or services from people they know, like, and trust. So that's why we want to be authentic. But there is a problem, and this is where automation comes in, because one of the biggest problems of establishing a really authentic presence on social media is time. It takes forever. So this is where all these automation systems have come in order to save us time. Now, you know me, I love a bit of productivity chat. I love a productivity hack as much as the next person. So I do think automation is a good idea, but it must be balanced with your authentic voice on social media. Let me delve into that a little bit more. I've got a couple of great quotes for you. The first is from meetedgar.com. Now, I don't use Edgar for my social media scheduling and automation. However, I love this quote. They've said, think of automation not as autopilot, but as cruise control. It takes care of the daily busy work, which gives you the freedom to concentrate on the things that really matter. It's a great quote, isn't it? And I've got another quote for you from Jane in the Lightbulb Club. She was talking about her previous occupation in IT, and she said, we always said that automation should be used for the boring, repetitive stuff, making it more accurate and leaving time for the value-added stuff that only a human can do well. I think Jane is absolutely bang on here, because there are certain things you just can't automate. You can't automate conversation on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you tend to live from a social media perspective. What you can automate is the distribution of your blog or podcast content. And on certain platforms, you're going to want to distribute that more than once. So, for example, on Twitter, I always post out my most recent podcast a good sort of 4 or 5 times over the course of a couple of weeks, because there is so much input on Twitter that it's easy for people to miss that particular post. I don't do this on Instagram. I only post once on Instagram, and I post a couple of times on Facebook, but a lot less than I would do on Twitter. For me, it just makes sense to automate that particular process, because who's got time to sit there and share this content again and again? Well, I certainly don't. And I really want to be driving traffic to my blog and podcast episodes, because that is my authentic voice. The key is definitely balance. Another thing that I do for automation, and I think this is a good example of one of those, as Jane puts it, boring, repetitive jobs, is that in my Facebook group, the Lightbulb Club, we have a regular feature on Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. And so it's just like a discussion prompt. So what I do is I go into my buffer and I queue up those prompts to come out on the same time, on the same day, every week, just so the conversation can flow and so I don't forget, basically. And, that's a great example of social media automation done particularly well. It's a regular thing that needs to go out, and if you forget to do it, authentic conversation, will halt. I've talked about SmarterQueue before, but it's another example of automation done well, in my opinion. So SmarterQueue basically allows you to recycle your evergreen blog content or links or quotes or whatever it is you want to share on a regular basis. So what you do, I tend to use it for links to my blog posts and podcast episodes. You create a library of your content, create a schedule, and then SmarterQueue just picks from that library and essentially recycles your content. And this automation, again, I think is a good example of social media automation done well, because I am distributing access to my authentic content on my blog and podcast. And it would just take too much time to repeat those posts. What else do I automate? Oh yeah, I've got a good example, and this one is a controversial one. And I am a bit torn as to whether this is automation done well or not. I'd love your input, actually. I use a system called Quuu, Q-U-U-U. And it's a paid service. I got a really good deal on AppSumo, so I didn't pay a huge amount of money for it. But what Quuu does is it selects top quality popular content in line with a number of themes that you've chosen. So I choose things like writing, blogging, social media, that sort of thing. So it picks and curates content for you by hand. I don't quite know how that works, but they say it's hand curated content. And it sends that content to your buffer and fits in with your distribution schedule. So this is one way that I share other people's content. And you do have the opportunity to check what Quuu have selected on your behalf. But often, I'll be honest, I don't. Because I would say 95 times out of 100, the content that they have selected for me has been absolutely spot on. So is that authentic? Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't check what they select for me. However, they are selecting content which my audience appears to enjoy a great deal. So I've got a bit of a question mark over that one. Is it authentic? I don't know. To answer the question then, does social media automation kill authenticity? I think my answer's got to be no. If you get the balance right. On certain platforms, I'm not sure automation is particularly good for starting conversation either. I'm thinking about those awful direct messages some people have set up so that when you follow them, you get this automatic DM. That being said, email automation, for me, feels perfectly okay. If you take the example of an autoresponder on your email marketing platform, you get a new subscriber and then they get your welcome email sequence. It would be ludicrous to be sending those emails out by hand. But I think the reason it feels okay for email and not so much for Twitter is that you've got a lot more words to use, so you are giving a genuine, authentic insight into whatever it is you want to say. So perhaps with Twitter, the brevity prevents that authenticity. I don't know, what do you think? My lovely accountability partner Jo from the Shiny Bees podcast dropped into the conversation and shared a little bit about her kind of automation practices. And she very much was on the same page as me in terms of setting up automation to distribute your own authentic content and then setting time aside to drop into various social media platforms to engage off the back of that sharing. So I think Jo said she spends something like 20 minutes a day doing that, which to me didn't sound like very much. So I think I might need to get a little bit better organised and a bit more diligent in checking the time I spend dropping in and doing the authentic engagement stuff. Those are my thoughts on the topic. What do you think? Is social media automation killing authenticity? Please do let me know in the comments in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Or you can drop into the Lightbulb Club. That's thelightbulb.club to have a chat with us on this very topic. Well, that's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you'll tune in next time.